Kalimera, kalispera, kalinikta, no matter where in this wild, wacky, and wonderful world you might be, thank you for making the Highbury Squad part of your day. It is another episode of Talented Gooners. We have a special one again for you. Here we go. Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Talented Gooners. Why don't we remove this picture so we can reveal our talented Gooner this evening? Welcome to Squad Central, Mr. Peter Lewis, a 60-year Arsenal fan. You guys, if you think you've been through it this season, let me tell you, Peter's been through it all. Welcome to Squad Central, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you very much. Hi, everyone.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm feel tired.
Now,
after 60 years, what new be?
Well, 60 years, but you were out rocking and rolling last night. What were you up to?
Yeah, so I went to see Elton John last night. It's probably his farewell tour. It's
Nice.
his farewell tour. Now he's 75, I think, and he's been doing nearly 300 gigs in this tour. And he got through the COVID period, and he said that sort of hip operation, or is struggling around. So if he can manage it, that anyone of my generation can easily do it. And he's older than I am, let me tell you.
Are you really seriously telling me right now that Elton John is 75?
Well, that's what he's telling me. I mean, his first gig, I think, was 1968 or 69. So that's 55 years ago. So there you go. So he's
Wow.
still rocking and rolling.
Wow.
He's still doing it.
It is crazy. It's crazy to me how some of these folks are still alive, Peter, after everything they've done.
The one thing I will say is he can afford a better hair than I can.
Hold on a second. Hold on. You can't be telling me that Elton John's hair is better than Big Bob's.
I bet it costs more than that.
Oh, we're going to get into a little bit of that with you later on. So let's start the very, very beginning. As you know, our Talented Gooners series features our people, our community, people out there doing really great things. And I've been a long admirer of Peter and his talent. He's an insane photographer, and I'm going to share some of that with you in just a little bit. But as you guys know, the rule is give us a like, a share, a subscribe. And of course, go follow our Talented Gooners, and you can find Peter here on Twitter, Peter Lewis 55. And thank you to our good friends at ZENITH Coins for always taking care of us. If you'd like to nominate someone for your Highbury Squad coin, just email us, thehighburysquad@gmail.com. Everyone who appears on the Talented Gooners gets a Highbury Squad coin. So, Peter, we would like to tell you that this evening, as our special guest and having a special talent, you are a recipient of our special ZENITH Coins Highbury Squad coin, signed by Kevin Campbell as well. So
that's great.
Oh, you're very welcome. Tell us where it all started. Why Arsenal?
Well, I'm a kid. I was originally born in Hackney, and Arsenal were my local side. And as you can imagine, as a kid growing up in Hackney, it was still sort of post-war in many respects. Lots of bomb sites and things like that. And we used to play on the old bomb sites. They used to call them Hitler's bomb sites. It was one of those sort of things that we never really knew who he was as a kid. But most of the houses were being demolished and rebuilt, and we got rehoused towards Stepney way. And I was about 6 or 7 years old, I think it was, and we moved into this new estate, and I met another kid, and I didn't have any friends who lived there. And the first thing he said to me was, "Who do you support?" And the only football I'd ever seen at that time was, I think I watched one FA Cup final on television, but I'd never sort of seen a football match. It was the days well before live television and everything, well before Match of the Day even. And I said, "Well, who do you support?" And he said, "I support Arsenal." And I said, well, so do I. I said, yeah. And the reality is that I only said it because I wanted to make a friend, and we became friends. And I thought, well, it's a great idea. Yeah, perhaps I might be able to get to a football match. You know, I was was it 6 or 7 years old, I think it was. And his dad took him and me to my very first football match, which was 23rd of March, 1963, which was just celebrated my 60th anniversary a few weeks ago. And that was the very first match I went to. And we stood, I think it was at the time, on the west side enclosure. It was probably safer than sort of standing in the North Bank. Those of an age will remember sort of the swaying of the crowds and everything like that. And I was only a nipper, I was short, and so that's where it came. And I decided for that moment I'm going to be an Arsenal supporter. And I've always had the maxim that you don't really swap sides. Once you pick a team, for good or bad, mind you, what did I know? I was just a nipper. Yeah, and I just had at that time, you have to remember, in that time that Spurs were the big cheese. They only won the league a couple of years before that, and they won the FA Cup as well. And so they were big cheese, and Arsenal they were in the doldrums. They were just sort of mid-table, and they hadn't won anything for many years as well. But it didn't matter to me. I was a kid. I just enjoyed the experience of going to a football match. And I stuck with it, obviously, ever since. But that's how I became an Arsenal supporter. I really never had any expectations that back then that I'll still be doing it 60 years later.
What I love about these shows is that we have generational talent on, and we talk about the different eras of Arsenal. And as you know, on our show, we've got baby boomers, Generation Xers, Generation Zs, millennials. And I love that they, we have listeners like young, Sophie, who's just starting her YouTube channel, for example, who love learning about the history. And it was in that late 60s. It's so weird for some Arsenal fans to comprehend it, but Tottenham were the superior team, weren't they, Peter?
They were, and also the other thing to remember is that West Ham United, they were more successful. They won the FA Cup in '64, and then went on to win the European trophy in '65. And then Chelsea in the swinging '60s, Chelsea were a very fashionable side. And they were actually quite a, if I use the term, quite a sexy sort of club to support. So a lot of sort of well-known people decided to support Chelsea. So Arsenal were this rather staid, boring, traditional club with a great sort of history, but nevertheless no real success at all in the 60s as well. And I grew up, sort of amongst a lot of obviously everyone I went to football with was older than I was, and inevitably, they were talking about the old times, the old days, and things like that. And so it was a very sort of strange beginning, because obviously a lot of kids, you support a football club either through your local area or your parents, or because you get attracted to a successful side and you want to become, you want to feel better about yourself by being associated with a successful football team. With me, it was just that I wanted to make a friend, because I'd moved to somewhere I had no friends.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's it. And inevitably, so I started to learn a lot about the history of the club. I listened to all these old people standing around me, talking about the old days as well. And it became fascinating, but inevitably, I think as a kid, I used to go to school, and I had some Spurs friends and some Chelsea friends, and they were talking about, we won the league, we won the cup, and I had none of that.
Well, your time did come, Peter. Your time did come.
It came.
I just wanted to show this. This is one of your programs?
That's my very first match. I've still got it now. So somewhere in one of those box files, so you can't see behind me, is that program. So that's Arsenal Blackburn from March 1963. That's the very first game I ever went to.
That is wonderful. Where did I know you meant, where did you sit?
I stood on the west enclosure. So basically, on the west side, it was a standing enclosure, and so there's obviously there's seating. There were sort of two rows. Below the upper tier, there were two sort of areas. There was a seated area, and below it was all standing. But part of that was an enclosure where you paid, I think, an extra, not a few bob or a pound or whatever. I didn't pay, remember, and I got taken.
Another one that snuck through the turnstiles back then.
Some,
No, but you
no,
got
no,
taken. You
someone
were
paid for me.
taken.
Someone paid for me. It wasn't my pocket money. Someone paid for me as well to go to the game, and so I stood there, and it was probably a safer place for kids to stand because there was no the swaying you got in
Yeah.
the big terraces as well.
It was intimidating, wasn't it? That swaying.
It was a bit. I managed to. I migrated a bit when I got a bit taller. I did actually move to the North Bank. So I worked my way around the ground from the clock end. So I went for the West Enclosure, went to the clock end, and then my dad, who suddenly started to take an interest in going to football with me, because apparently he was like a lukewarm Spurs supporter.
Your
My
dad?
Yeah,
I get that. My dad's a United fan, so I understand that. But you did the right thing.
Yeah, you see, my dad, he eventually became an Arsenal supporter because what it's like, with your kids, you take an interest in what your kids are doing. And because I became so much interested in Arsenal, my dad decided he'd take me, and he became quite interested, more of an Arsenal supporter. He was a fair weather. I think he was an Orient supporter. It shows
Wow.
my dad, he liked football, but he wasn't really wasn't a hardcore supporter like I am.
Yeah, you know what's funny is back then too, like my dad followed United because he fell in love with George Best, like a lot of people, right? It was like young people like me growing up in the early 80s or whatever, before the family got hold of you, you admired Liverpool because of just the players they had and the way they
Yeah.
played. And Dalglish was just insane, and he wore that number 7 shirt, and everyone in the playground wanted to be, one of those players. And my mum fell in love with Stoke City because of Gordon Banks, and she was a
Right.
Stoke City supporter. So, a little bit that's happening today a little bit with young fans. Like they follow players versus teams. But, yeah, I think even back then, if there was a player that came up that you really liked, you gravitated to that team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Well, look, what's this picture about?
Okay, so that was taken in 1969, in August 1969. So that is actually me, the little one on the right hand side. Let me tell you,
Mhm.
in goal is Bob Wilson, and
I
the two
see.
chaps of watching is Bob McNabb and Charlie George. So they were sort of legends from the first double team. And what actually happened with that one was I entered a magazine. It was Shoot magazine.
Oh my
And
gosh, yes.
Shoot was a
Love
football
shoot.
magazine. I think it came out in 1968, maybe. And as part of its opening, there's a competition for kids to enter to win a prize to go with a group of people to go and visit Arsenal's training ground in the morning, and then go to Highbury for the afternoon, which I entered for. And I was selected. I won. So
That's amazing. You know what's
yeah,
amazing? Because okay, so those listening on audio, what we're showing here is an old black and white photo. Let me get rid of the banner here. It's just really fantastic. And Peter's wearing, like, if this was today, the kid would be turning up in Adidas studs, the whole regalia of the kit, and you're wearing your trousers. Are you
no
wearing?
replica, no replica kit then.
It's just fantastic. But here's the juxtaposition to this. I love this because here he is, Charlie George, Bob Wilson. How old are you there, Peter?
But that was August 69. So I was
69.
born in 1955. So I can't remember, it was either before or around about my 14th birthday.
Right. Okay. So now we fast forward and check this out, Gunners. And this is what I love about this series on our show. You fast forward, and then here's a picture of older Peter with Charlie George holding up the FA Cup, of course, from the 71 double
Yeah.
winning team, which I said at the top of the show, even though Peter watched Spurs be glorious in the late 60s, his time would come, and it certainly did in 71. And then it's you and Sir Bob, who's been on this show
Yeah.
in our Legends series and is absolutely amazing. Both epic humans. Peter,
Yeah.
going from the young boy who won the shoot and got selected, the competition, to this. Talk me through it.
Okay, so what happened is firstly with Charlie George, what actually happened was my kids for my birthday one year, bought me one of the Legends tours at the Emirates. Let me tell you, both my kids, they're avid Arsenal fans, avid Arsenal supporters. They're in their 30s now, So, and there they are. So that picture was taken. That was obviously Arsene Wenger's last day. So
Yeah.
we were
Wonderful.
season ticket holders at the Emirates, which is nice. So we went together, and there we are again with Arsenal's FA Cup in 2014 as well.
Wonderful.
So yeah, we're great Arsenal fans. So what actually happened? They bought me a Legends tour, and they knew that Charlie George was one of my sort of all-time heroes because he was a fellow Islington schoolboy. So when I went to secondary school, I went to a secondary school in Islington. So from 1966 onwards, I was in Islington, and every day we used to there were obviously lots of Arsenal supporters at school, and that just enhanced my obvious support for the club as well.
I love
And
that.
there's a story I'll tell you, which my kids know only too well, is that our school playing fields, they were somewhere in North London, and we used to get a coach from school. And he used to go up Holloway Road, and as he went up Holloway Road, it went past. There's a library on the right hand side, somewhere between Highbury and Islington and Drayton Park and the area on the right hand side, and there's a few sculptures on the side of this building, and one of them is an old poet called Spencer Edmund. I think it's Edmund Spencer, and it's a bit of a story. This Edmund Spencer, and it made me laugh because our deputy headmaster at our school, he was called Spencer, and every time we used to go up past it, and we always used to shout out Spencer, Spencer, and one of my traditions, and my kids will tell you this, is one of the absolute rituals of match day is when I walk up from Highbury and Islington to the stadium, I always walk past and I always shout out Spencer when I walk past the library. Let me tell you, you Gooner fans, if you're walking up Holloway Road and you see this library, sort of white library on the stadium side as you're going up Holloway Road, you'll see this sculpture of Spencer on there. Let me tell you, I had shouted at Spencer. It must be 4 figures now. I mean, I don't know how many. I don't know how many home games ago, but you'll see there's a point on the corner as well. So that's all part of the part of my history.
I really love that. So it's that's a great anecdote, and we're nutty, aren't we, as fans? I'm wearing this hat until something different happens. Put it that way.
I've completely diverted, haven't I? So anyway, so my kids bought me a Legends tour, and I met up with Charlie George, and as an old fellow Islington schoolboy, he was the one conducting the tour, and it was great to meet and have a chat with him. And there's me standing with that great picture with Frank and Charlie, for the 71 double team as well.
I love that kit. I really love that kit. I love the cleanliness of just, because we've had blue, right? And, of course, Tottenham are blue and white, but the yellow away clean shirt with just the cannon and the blue shorts. I mean, 71, the FA Cup, 79, right?
Yeah, no manufacturer's logo either.
No, just the crest. And then Bob Wilson. What happened with Sir Bob?
What actually happened with that was I can't remember. I think it was 2011. It might have been. Is that to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the double winning team, that double winning team, they had an event at the Emirates Stadium, which I went along to, and Bob was there with Charlie George and John Radford, and I think David. No, it was Eddie Kelly. That's it, Eddie Kelly. He was there as well. The 4 of them there, and so I got to meet Bob afterwards, and I took a copy of that photograph which he showed, and I got Charlie and Bob to sign it as well. So I finally, after well, it would have been 43 years, or I think 42 or 43 years since it was the original event, I got Bob and Charlie to sign a copy of that photograph as well.
It's incredible. I mean, the picture's incredible. It's Peter and Bob Wilson for those listening on audio, and he's holding up the 10x8 of the original picture from Peter's experience, thanks to Shoot magazine. I used to love Shoot and Match, and just wonderful, absolutely top shelf stuff.
It was great.
And
I got to meet all the players. By the way, it wasn't just that photograph. I got to meet all the players came. They were at the training grounds as well. We met them all, and this was a bit later. That one, let me tell you, that was not taken in 1969.
it wasn't. I just put a picture up of Peter and Ian Wright, but we'll get to that. Talk to me about what I love about your story is that you've seen Arsenal win the double in 71. What a team, by the way. I
They
think because
were.
we see recent success, we just remember what's recent. What was that experience like? Because then I want to get to like your experience then seeing the other double winning team, the
Okay.
Invincibles. Talk to me about.
Okay. Well, you have to remember in those days, the only way you could get to cup finals, FA Cup finals, and things like that was if you weren't a season ticket holder. Was in those days you in the programs they used to do a little a coupon cutout, and because I was able to get to every single home match of that 71 double year, I managed to get to Wembley. So I applied for a ballot and I managed to get tickets to go to the cup final. But remember, what had happened is in the previous few years really made a big impact on what happened to achieve that double. It was in 1969. I've often said this. In 1969 was my worst ever Arsenal experience that I've had, and that was the year Arsenal got to the League Cup final and got beaten by Swindon Town, who were a third tier team at the time. Remember, so it's like Arsenal getting beaten by I don't know.
Nottingham Forest, like in the
Yeah,
cup
well,
last year, or Wrexham. The
Forest.
Wrexham lost the Mickey
Well,
Thomas free kick.
well, yeah. I mean, Nottingham Forest. Remember, these days are Premier League team, but you can
Yeah.
imagine it was a team from two divisions lower at 1969, and then the year after that was the year that Arsenal won the European Fairs Cup, or the City European Fairs Cup, which is effectively sort of the same type of competition as the Europa League is now, and Arsenal had beaten Ajax in the semi-final, and Ajax were a great team. That was Johan Cruyff was in that team. That's the team that went on the year after to win the European Cup 3 years in a row. So to beat them in the semi-final, and Arsenal made it to the final and beat Anderlecht to win the European Fairs Cup in 1970, and that was Arsenal's first trophy in 17 years. It's a longer run than Spurs are on at the moment. So that shows you how big a gap that really is. Spurs think 50,
Peter,
Spurs
it
think 50 years
shows
is
you just
bad.
how hard it is to win stuff, really, doesn't it? I mean, it's not
It is in
easy.
those days. Remember that it's there were there's not a lot of difference in between a lot of clubs in terms of ownership. It was all the money was all very limited as well.
Look at these sideburns. Look at George Graham and Charlie George's sideburns here. They are
somewhere there's me in that crowd, in that 100,000 crowd there that day. So I managed to make it to that one.
What an experience!
Oh yeah,
this must have just been incredible.
I still got my ticket and program for that match, and the community singing brochure as well, which you used to get in those days.
I think we've shown your ticket. When we first started, we've shown I think your ticket for this. I think Peter and I spoke a couple years ago, but this is fantastic. So 71, we win the double. You're flying as an Arsenal fan. You get through the 70s, and 79 is the FA Cup. But what's it like going through the rest of that decade as a Gooner?
But the funny thing is that once you taste a little bit of success, you think, okay, it's going to continue. And it obviously it was a bit spasmodic. We reached a couple of more FA Cup finals and lost them both in the early 70s. Lost to Leeds, and that's for certain. And inevitably beat Man United in 79, and then in 1980 we lost the FA Cup final to West Ham.
Did you go to the 79 final?
I went to the 79 final. I didn't go to the 1980 final because that was just a month before I got married, and I hadn't been going to quite as many matches that year because I had other things on my mind, so I didn't build up all the vouchers. But
nice.
that's I went to the 1978 final. We lost to Ipswich Town.
Did you go to the when we get into the 80s? Were you at the West Ham final we lost?
No, I didn't go to the West End. That was
Mm,
the one just before my wedding.
your wedding.
So I didn't go to that. But I mean, what actually happened in the 80s is that we started a family. So I had two kids, and I was going less to football. I couldn't go to every single game because I had other priorities, other
Yeah.
responsibilities, other choices to make as well.
Um,
But inevitably, I was yeah, my passion for Arsenal never changed. I mean, I never sort of suddenly stopped supporting Arsenal, but I couldn't make the sort of games that I could before for a number of reasons. One of which is that bringing up my family was actually the most important thing.
Yeah, I think we all go through those phases where, life kind of happens. There's that exuberant youth and that freedom that we all go through. And then there's that phase where, responsibility kicks in and, maybe it's not as easy to get to games or pay for games because your responsibilities change and stuff like that. But um, what was your take then as an Arsenal fan as you're going through the 80s and the arrival of George Graham?
Well, George Graham, I mean, he was already a bit of an Arsenal legend, his playing days.
Mhm.
Do you know what? I'll tell you a story about George Graham. Is that George Graham is the scorer of still, well, I see it's the greatest Arsenal goal I've ever seen that no one can remember.
Tell us.
And it was in 1968. That's it, 1968. He scored a goal, and it was an overhead kick goal. He was standing on about the penalty area, and it was David Court. David Court isn't a guy from way beyond who most people can't remember either. And he scored this overhead kick goal, and it's still one in my memory now. It was at the clock end at Highbury. He scored, and he became one of my favourites
Yeah, I love
from
that.
them. But I mean, everyone knew he was called the stroller. He used to stroll about a bit, but he was a great player. But when he eventually became Arsenal manager, then that was yeah sort of the second sort of I call it great Arsenal team of my lifetime. After the Bertie Mee era, which sort of fizzled out a bit, and then George Graham came and won these 6 trophies in 8 years as well. And there you go, 1989.
There's
That's the
our
game.
friend there's our friend Stevie Nicol who was on the show last week. Um, and
I mean,
yeah, we rib him about this whenever he comes on. But were you there? You didn't I don't think you were
no,
there at Anfield
no,
that night, were you?
no. I mean, the story of that one was I was watching at home on ITV, and I had 2 young kids, including a daughter that wasn't even a year old yet.
Mm.
And the story of that game was that when Michael Thomas scored that winning goal, and I started shouting. I was running around the house absolutely like a lunatic. I was absolutely screaming, and it took me about 5 or 6 minutes to calm down. It's only when I calmed down I stopped. So I could hear my daughter, who was probably about about 9 or 10 months old, upstairs crying in her cot, because obviously I'd woken her up and disturbed her from her sleep. And I don't know how long she. Let me tell you, she's forgiven me since. She's forgiven me since.
No trauma, no trauma.
I still can remember this moment. Is when I eventually calmed down. My wife was in the house, and she just let me go. She never said calm down. She just yeah.
Hey, listen, it was one of those moments. I mean, it and your reaction, probably, not probably, well warranted. I think that was I'm not I don't know if there's been it's the most nuts moment, I think, just the drama of it all, the timing of it all. I know it's compared to the Aguero goal, but in the 80s to go to Anfield, to have to win 2-0, not concede against that Liverpool team.
Well, the difference between that and the Aguero goal was we were playing against Liverpool, and Liverpool would
Yes.
have won the league if we hadn't. If we hadn't, it was a big moment for Manchester City. But in terms of actually the league, the absolute ultimate league decider between 2 teams,
Yeah, yeah,
there's never been a league decider like that between 2 teams. It's been
yeah,
decided like that before. That's for certain as well. And I'm fairly certain that the Aguero goal will always be remembered by Manchester City supporters in the same way that Arsenal will never forget Thomas's moment. But
yeah.
it's
Yeah, no, it is different. It's very very different. So that's Vesper agreeing with me. So then we go from you're seeing it all late 60s, 70s, 80s, and then it's the arrival of Wenger and another revolution and an evolution and a change at the club.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, I mean, Wenger's story is well, we all know Wenger's story. Yeah, it's he's 22 years at the club as well, but it's inevitable that you get off to such a great start like Wenger did in his first few years that you've got a lot to live up to, and yeah, no one can sustain it for that length of time.
How did you enjoy the Invincibles? And I'm curious here because I love your generational stories, right? So you've got the Invincibles, you've got the 89 situation, you've got the 71 team, and you went even further back as well. I think it's always hard to compare eras, and I think there's a way to just love and appreciate and enjoy them all. But of course,
Yeah,
when you go Invincible, Peter, it's hard to compare that to a lot. But what's in your heart?
um, well, in my heart, I suppose, yeah, I would always refer to the original sort of double winning team as as my era, in the sense that it's the one which absolutely sealed the deal for me. Not that there was a deal to be sealed, but it was the one where yeah, there's no turning back as well. And I mean, the Invincibles were is it needs not to be said. It's a remarkable story. Now that photograph that you put on the screen there, that's my photo. I took that outside.
Tell everyone who it is who's listening on audio.
Okay, so that's Arsene Wenger, Patrick Vieira, and they're holding up the Premier League trophy for the Invincibles. So I took that photo. So I'd gone with my daughter. So we'd been at the Arsenal Leicester game the day before, the one where they completed the Invincibles League. And the day after, we went with my wife. We went for the parade in Islington, and we got up early, and we managed to find a prime spot outside the town hall. You can imagine how many people were out there outside the town
Yes.
hall. In those days, of course, we didn't have the sort of mobile phones that we have today.
Wow.
It's not, obviously 19 years ago. I had my little pocket camera, just a little pocket camera, that I could take photographs with, and the bus has stopped, and before they got off the bus to go for the civic reception, so Arsene and Patrick, they faced the opposite side and they lifted up the trophy like that, and I got my shot. Yeah,
Oh, I got chills.
yeah. I mean, in fact, that's great. That's one of my proudest photos, to get the manager and the captain with the trophy to the Invincibles standing outside the town hall. So that is one of my photos. That one. It's a bit old and grainy, as I told you before, that in those days, cheap cameras you can imagine today.
Yeah,
But,
I love it.
what a proud thing is to be able to capture that photograph.
With your permission, I think this should be the thumbnail of this episode. It's wonderful. It really,
Okay.
it really, really is. It's a
Yeah,
great, great picture. Look at
yeah.
and the organic joy. It's so organic. I love it. It's a very unprepared photo that looks and captures, the moment.
I've always wondered if someone was very clever digitally, if they could actually zoom in on the trophy and see if there's a reflection of me taking that photograph.
That would be amazing. Hey, if
Yeah.
anyone's listening to the show who knows that there's who knows an expert that does that, let us know, so we can make Peter's day. And just before we get onto some of your photography and stuff, this is you again with this the double.
So this one was taken in 1998. So that's
Yep.
the one after Arsenal were beating Newcastle in the FA Cup to win Arsenal's first trophy. So Arsenal allowed people to come and get their photographs taken, with the two trophies. So I think I put on a bit of weight back then, but I was wearing my Arsenal doubles at winners T-shirt and had my photograph taken with it. And
Let's
that
get
one
back
was
to this one with Righty.
So that was when in for his book, he did his autobiography,
Mhm.
and we went and we met him in the Tollington, I think it
Nice.
was.
Oh, the good old Tollington.
Yeah, so we met him at the Tollington Arms, and I got to meet Ian and have a chat with him, and with his pic taken. So Ian's one of one of my all-time favourite Arsenal players, of
Okay.
all eras.
Okay, so here's the quick fire round. Who is your all-time favorite Arsenal player?
Well, I'll probably say Righty. Yeah, I did actually. I was invited to a few years ago to write into the Arsenal program. We sort of given some stuff about my path, my interests, and things like that. And so I think Righty was up the number one, and then there was Thierry. You can imagine Thierry Henry, Charlie George
Yeah.
was there, Robert Perez,
You like the
and Dennis.
flair. Peter likes the flair players. I like that.
Yeah, Dennis Burke. Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
I'm not saying I dislike. I'm not saying I dislike the others. Everyone needs a good stopper like Tony Adams.
Absolutely. Needed those boys to win anything, didn't anything and everything.
Yeah,
All right, your
yeah.
favorite ever game?
Well, it's got to be the 1970 Fairs Cup final because it's the very first trophy I'd ever seen Arsenal win, and that was at Highbury and that evening, and I wasn't really supposed to be there because it was I had a school day the next day, but I didn't care about that. Uh, as my exam results proved, and I still remember today. I can still remember all these old men around me sort of crying because they'd never seen Arsenal win a trophy for for 17 years,
I
and
love
longer
it.
as well. And the other one is possibly there's two. I think. I mean, I love the Arsenal Wigan game, the last match at Highbury. So that one, where Arsenal
Yep.
Arsenal
Yep,
won
yep.
4-2, famous game. So I was there. Again, my kids went to that game as well, and so I love that one. And so that's probably one
Okay,
of my
that's good.
favourites. And also,
That's good.
and also, and also the Chelsea game in 2017, where I managed to get tickets for all four of us, and my wife, my
The
two kids,
cup?
and me. And all four of us, we managed to get tickets for that final. That one where
Nice.
Aaron Ramsey got the winning goal.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that was
That was
great.
just great, wasn't it? That's really, I mean,
Yeah,
no one
yeah.
was expecting us to win that final. It was brilliant.
Loads
Okay,
of memories.
real quick before we show some of your photography and stuff, are you taking George Graham or Arsene Wenger? Or are you taking someone else? You can't I'm gonna ask you about Mikel in a minute, so
Well, it'll have to be Arsenal because basically he changed the face of Arsenal. I think for good as
didn't
well.
George do? Didn't George change Arsenal?
Of course he
It's
did. I
like
mean,
George was 1.0 and Arsene was 2.0, right?
yeah. There's two
Yeah.
things I'll say. Firstly, is that George Graham was around where I was going to Arsenal a little bit less because of my kids, but also I remember George more as a player than being the manager
As
he
yeah.
was. That's where I
Yeah,
first
yeah.
really got to love George Graham as a person as well. But
Okay, so
Arsene Wenger sort of stands as the managerial legend
talk to me about the current Arsenal and what you think. Listen, everyone, just take a beat, put your coffee down, just have a little listen right here. Peter, 60 years supporting the Arsenal. His first game was in 63. He has seen it all. I want you to tell us what you see now, Peter, and what this Arsenal means to you, having seen the Arsenal in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s, and now another decade.
So, I mean, the first thing first to say about Mikel is that I'm like everyone else. I'm just absolutely staggered with the development of what he's done with the club and the team, and given the fact that there was a sort of a certain toxicity about the fans at Emirates Stadium for a number of years. That the change is remarkable. It's a remarkable change given the fact that he's not been the recipient of endless streams of money. He's had to work with with a budget and also work with a new sort of managerial structure in the club as a whole as well. So it's quite remarkable. The other thing I will say is that he's also had to deal with an awful lot of doubters from even within the club, never mind outside of the club as
Mhm.
well. So
I was
he's
one early on. I was one early on when things weren't going well. Eighth, losing to Emery. Starting the following season 0-0-0. Yeah, I was definitely
Yeah,
someone who questioned where we were going, but Kevin always said once he gets his players together, and I
yeah.
always said too, like if he can formulate a team in his image and he can become that kind of manager that is able to do that, then good for him.
I mean, the real challenge will have to be the real challenge will have to be is I don't know like anyone else that how this season is going to end. It may
Mm,
end, in winning the league. It may not. I mean, my gut instinct tells me that it's going to require an awful lot of luck these next 8 games for Arsenal, to win the league, given the fact that the fixture list is still to come. But it's possible anything can happen, and no one can doubt that it's been a remarkable season, way above everyone's expectations. That's for certain.
mhm.
The
Are you
real test.
enjoying it, Peter? You
Oh, of
enjoying the
course I am.
journey? Yeah.
I'm loving the journey. I've loved this season, and also I'm terrified for the last few games to come as well.
It's all right.
Because
We've got this guy between the sticks.
yeah, yeah, that,
Oh,
that was a remarkable save. I mean, it's just
yeah, it's
incredible.
amazing. It was
Yeah,
amazing, wasn't it? Brilliant stuff from Peter. Right. The reason you're on the show too is how I found you. I was like, who is this Gooner with all this? Because I'm a space nut. And I don't know if our listeners know this about me, but I fall asleep at night to a NASA slideshow, Peter. I want to ask you about the a whole bunch of stuff, but tell me about this because you not do some stuff for the BBC as well?
yeah. So I mean, it all started as what happened was I got invited or headhunted, if you like, by the BBC to appear as a rank amateur to appear on their Sky Notes night program. The Sky Night program is their flagship space program, which has been running since the 1950s. And I got invited just out of the blue. I never applied. Someone just saw some of the pictures that I tweeted and asked me to come along because they were quite interested in the fact that I was using my a smartphone to take at these rather than these very expensive cameras. I mean, I had a telescope,
Mhm.
and I attached my phone camera to the telescope to take some of them, but nothing more tricky than that. And I got invited to appear actually on the program itself, and it was if anyone's interested, it was September of last year. Got screened September 2022, and I got to meet the astronomers there and talk about some of my photography, which is really weird because I'm not really a serious astronomer or astrophotographer or anything like that. I'm just a sort of simple hobbyist. So I mean that picture that was a solar eclipse that took place last October, as well here.
Mhm. And
Um,
this one that I love that there's
so that is
Saturn.
basically that's a compilation of all the planets that they're not really that close together. Let me tell you that's a composite of them all together. So that's all the planets from little Mercury at the bottom up to Neptune at the top right. So there with a picture of the sun. These are all pictures I have taken. I must admit on that one I used a specialist little camera to take that, but it was the stuff that I started doing. When we got to lockdown in 2020, I had a lot more sort of time on my hand because I wasn't going out so much. So I
Mhm.
thought I'd spend more time at night taking pictures, and I learned as well. That's a picture of a nebula in the sky, which was taken through the telescope with my phone camera attached to the telescope eyepiece, just to take a picture of clouds of matter, which is basically dust matter, which will be formed to become a star one day.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah,
that.
and
And
yeah, so
what's
that one.
this compil
So,
what's this?
so, so this one was last month that took place. So the picture there at the top is Venus and the bottom is Jupiter, and they became what's called
Mhm.
a super conjunction. That's when visually they become very close to each other. So to the naked eye, it look like sort of one sort of bright um, dot in the sky of two planets. But in fact, through a telescope, you could probably pass a moon's circumference between the two of them. And the bottom is Jupiter with its 4 little moons around Jupiter, and the top is Venus, which is a very bright planet as well in the sky.
Amazing.
And yeah, and that was just how it looked through the eyepiece,
I love
just
it.
looking through there. So
And
there's
this is another compilation here?
That's a compilation. This was back in. This was soon after I got my first telescope. This is a lunar eclipse. So this is when the what happens is that the Earth passes between the moon and the sun, and therefore it completely obliterates the sort of the moon over a period of time. So if you look at the top left one there, that's the moon in full uh, fully lit. And the red in the middle there is when it's completely covered by the Earth, but the light of the Earth sort of bends around, the sun bends around the Earth and casts this sort of shadow from our atmosphere onto the moon. So that's called a blood red moon, where the moon is actually fully in the shadow of the Earth, but it's actually the sunlight that's bending
It's
around the Earth to
amazing.
create that effect.
I love it. I love
And
it.
those got shown on the BBC's program as well. You know, as part of my portfolio. You know, it sounds so flash, doesn't it? I'm just a humble amateur, just having a bit of
Oh,
fun,
no,
and
I love it. A humble amateur, but this is what I love about Talented Gooners. We've done a lot of artists, and I was noticing a little bit more like I need to showcase our photographers. Like Pete, you know, I've been loving your stuff for, 2 or 3 years now, and I don't know if you know Russell Hogg, but he's a really good photographer. He does nature photos. We're going to get Russ on as well. And then, we like to say if there's anyone out there that is ever looking for a great photographer for projects and stuff like this, you can connect with us here, the Highbury Squad at gmail.com. Follow Peter at Peter Lewis 55, please. I haven't shown you all of his pictures because I want you to go over and give him a follow and check out his beautiful
nice.
work. It has been such a pleasure talking to you, sharing your work with us. Look at all of these beautiful photos. We have so many talented Gooners in our community, everyone. And this club brings us together. And I'm so grateful to meet people like Peter who tell us a story, really just a beautiful story of being an Arsenal fan and the experiences down the road and along the way. To meet Bob Wilson and Charlie George as a young boy, and then to meet them as a man and a dad. And, it's just really wonderful to see the Invincibles years and years later, his first game in 63, the double winners in 71. Just wonderful to have your legacy as a fan is so important, and we need to treasure it, Peter. We really, really do. And this conversation is just the first, because I'm going to get you back on with Kev, because Kev will go in on so many of these things, especially, during his time at the club. And Vic Akers is going to come back too, and another like this is the stuff, and I just love it. What would you like Arsenal fans to know about you before you go? If there's anything you've left off the table, what would you like to tell them? I always ask everyone to do a little bit of a closing statement before they leave Squad Central.
Well, first things first is supporting the club and ignoring a lot of the noise that comes around the pressure of being a supporter of a club as well, especially in a club that's got its rivals, whether or not it's your friends that supports other teams, or these days on social media where there's so much noise and rubbish that gets played, is just to ignore all of that. I mean, I've followed and supported Arsenal for far too many years to worry about losing games or what people might say about your club. It doesn't really matter, because I've always said that my best and worst ever experience happened more than 50 years ago supporting Arsenal, and everything else since then is in between. And I use that as a sort of defense mechanism for comforting me with a defeat or a disappointment. But the reality is that that's part of what makes a football supporter, or supporter of any any football team, really makes you what you are. Is sort of that feeling. It's almost hard to describe. I would suggest anyone who's just watching this, whether or not you've been an Arsenal supporter for as long as I have, or just turned up a year or two ago, is that follow your instincts. Don't worry what other people say. Don't be intimidated by a feeling of disappointment, or a feeling of take an elation from winning something as well. That take that all in your step. Remember, it's always about the next game. That's always you're only as good as your next game. That's what I've always said.
Well said. Brilliant stuff. The sirens are going off.
Yeah.
Finally, Peter, are we going to do it? Are we going to bring it home?
Well, and there you go. This is a headache. I felt that if someone said to me, all you need to do is draw with Manchester City and Newcastle and you'll win the title. If they said that to me back in August, I'd have laughed at them. That's for certain as well. So I take it. I take it as read that I think it's possible we can draw with Manchester City and we can draw with, or at least draw with Newcastle as well. I'm just not so certain we can win our next game against West Ham. That's what I'm saying. Just worry about the next game.
Worry about the next game. Good advice. Please give Peter a follow at PeterLewis55. Thank you again for sharing your story with us. We appreciate it. Tell everyone about the show and we will see you soon. And as Super Kev would always say, tell your loved ones you love them, and at ease, squaddies, at ease.
Bye, everyone.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform. Please stand clear of the discussion doors. The next stop is Highbury Squad.